Hi, friends. Host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People. And today's title is SI, the Silent Killer. Why is SI the Silent Killer? I really don't know. It sounded like a funny title. I do know for sure that it is the Silent Killer, Isaiah Black, but I couldn't exactly tell you why. You know what else is the Silent Killer? Quiet murderers. They're notorious for silently killing people. Um, SI is not exactly a silent killer, I guess, but it's like it's what gets you stuck. So it gets you stuck, and for me, it's the source of existential terror as well, because existential terror manifests most when, for example, you forget a reality and base existence on false assumptions. So, like my mom, for example, is often having to remember, forgetting and then re-remembering that her mother is dead. That's it's a terror moment for an ENTP, anyways, 4 slot SI, when you operate under the assumption that your dog's still alive, for example, but then you remember that she's dead. That's a very ontologically distressing moment. Some instances of it are less distressing than others. Like the other night, I was driving home from someplace, and right from the supermarket down in Temple City, and I started heading to my old house in Temple City because for 20 years, every time I left that supermarket, I went to my house in Temple City. When I moved back to Arcadia, I started going to that same Ralph's again because it's cheaper than the Bonds that's closer. And last time we went there, when we left, I started driving to my old house. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? But, it's 20 years of habit. That one didn't distress me so much. But, listening to my mom talk, she had this friend named Maureen Bryant, who I knew reasonably well for one of my mom's friends. At least I had talked to her on a number of occasions. And she seems to have been my mom's favorite. Mom doesn't really talk about any of her old friends except for Maureen. Maureen died about a year ago, and Mom can't remember that. And so when she talks about Maureen, it's kind of like a double SI whammy to me. On the one hand, it's like there's this woman that was my mom's friend for a long time that when I was a kid, she'd come over for wine and chatting parties on Friday afternoon or whatever. And I'd see her when I went with my mom to work, and she was just sort of like this not significant, but regular fixture in my life growing up. And then I maybe saw her once or twice as an adult, and then she's dead, And it's like, hold on, I never got to wrap up that storyline at all, Not that there was much of a storyline there. I barely knew the woman, frankly, but she played a larger than that role in my SI. I may have not known her particularly well, but in my SI, she was a figure that represented the status quo when I was young. It's that changing the status quo when you're not looking that causes existential terror, at least in me. Let me pull this bong rip. But SI is kind of the silent killer in other ways as well. Like, Rachel and I went to Quimco's last night for dinner. And while we were sitting there, I was struck by this ongoing inclination I have to find places of hurt feelings. Now, there's not really any hurt feelings to find here. In other words, there's no injustice that's persisting that I need to remedy. But I think I have a habit of finding emotional connection via emotional volatility somewhat, at least from the last relationship, that I had to constantly be on the alert. That I was subject to a lot of ontological violence and or aggression, whatever you want to call it. Hi, David. Naughty, Nody, however you say it. Winston's mom, if you're trying to spell senior, there's no I in it. If you're trying to say I'm a senior citizen, I'm not quite a senior citizen yet, okay? I'm not even 50 years old. You have to give me another 17 years, please. Let's not rush it. If you're trying to say senior, you're a lot like my friend Cameron, who always greets me as no, I know. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't overanalyzing. I was recognizing in myself this habituated desire to find strong feelings in a relationship by looking for aspects of the relationship that hurt me. Because I guess it's a kind of FI that I recognize more easily. And there's something self-indulgent about finding and wallowing in hurt feelings. Because the actual healthy connection that Rachel and I have, which is almost entirely conflict-free, and sort of like my musing about this thing didn't lead to any sort of conflict last night. It wasn't born in that at all. It was just sort of realizing that, I guess, in the absence of discord created by incompatibility, what exactly does one do in a relationship, you know? And the thing is, well, one just experiences the ongoing pleasantness of the whole thing. Being FI polar means, but not just FI polar, being a human being that hasn't been in a good relationship before, really. I'm having to get accustomed to what it's like when you're not constantly having to adjust to wrong things. I mean, Rachel and I have the easiest relationship I could ever imagine. It's like effortless. We haven't had any fights at all or conflicts at all since the last time we had a fight, which was, I don't know, a month ago or something. maybe 3 weeks. The thing is, when we do have a fight, it seems to have heretofore they've been fairly large fights, but not particularly loud fights necessarily. Like we weren't screaming and yelling at each other generally. Although I mean, I can raise my voice on occasions. I'm actually not feeling blue, Winston's mom. No, neither of us are really doing any adjusting. That's the interesting thing, David Naughty, is we just don't require any adjustment to each other. What's required adjusting is our old heuristics, our old habits of dealing with incompatibility. You know, most people in any relationship have some degree of incompatibility that has to be dealt with, that you have to work on, you have to compromise on, stuff like that. Rachel and I just don't seem to have much of any of that. And our previous fights have all been about those heuristics misapplied. Does SI tool have trouble receiving universal explanations? I find if you want to demonstrate a point, it is most effective to make them experience the feeling without perspective themselves. It's absolutely right, Jeff Barnes. I'm talking to my dad, right? He's constantly going back and forth about making like general statements or permanent statements about shit that's in a state of flux. And he can't understand that it's indeterminate. Are you thrown off balance by Rachel being so well balanced, calm, and comfortable? I'm thrown off balance by us being so well balanced, calm, and comfortable. I've always been able to manage myself, and I've had to manage myself in every relationship in terms of managing myself emotionally and mood-wise, and I've always been the more just and fair partner in every relationship I've been in, except maybe my very first one. Where I think I was the less just and fair partner. Which taught me the importance of justice and fairness. So it's basically, what's disconcerting is, not knowing how to behave in a relationship sometimes that doesn't require a lot of adjustment on either party, by either party. I mean, the adjustments that's required is us trying to adjust to a kind of ecosystem that's consistent with our species of plant. So it's like we were water-loving plants in some sense that we're living in too dry of an area, and we were squeaking by. And in a lot of ways, most people are like that most of the time. Although I will say, I suspect that this is only really true for SX types. It's like, I need to be in a relationship. Rachel needs to be in a relationship. We've been trying to find the right relationship for a long time. And once we found each other and things are super compatible and it's easy and all of our needs are being met and stuff, there's a sense of a loss of a tool set that once was required, and that was so required that you became quite accustomed to using it. And adjusting to not using a tool set anymore is great. It's absolutely great, but it can be disconcerting. It can be like, when I feel a lot of strong feelings for Rachel, I tend to immediately go to looking for hurt feelings and or harm prevention. Harm prevention being like suspicion and checking to make sure she's not talking to any boys and stuff like that. Well, I just don't feel any impetus to do that in this relationship. it seems like Rachel and I talk too much about everything. No. I'm just sort of musing about musings that I had. I'm reflecting on the shift in in my identity that is occurring as a consequence of being in the right relationship, of old habits that I'm moving away from. Thinking out loud. Yeah, exactly.
No. Sorry.
That's fine. Are you playing a video game?
Yeah.
Cool. Compatibility is great, but it makes me then wonder, is there something wrong that I'm not seeing? Double-edged sword. Well, David Naughty, I agree. It does make you wonder, is there something wrong I'm not seeing? But uh that fades the longer you're together. Intrinsically, Bread says, I thought in the beginning every relationship is very good. And almost all things are great. Sometimes this keeps this way. Sometimes we discover things and the significant other we didn't recognize earlier. That's sort of true. I mean, it's not the case that my last relationship was great at the beginning. It was trouble from the beginning. But what I will also note is Rachel and I have tested this thing in fire. You got to remember that we've been together approximately 3 months now. And we have been together at close to 24 hours a day for those 3 months, as can be imagined. It's like we went from not knowing each other to living together in a week. And, a week after we started talking, basically, approximately, she flew out here and never went home. Now that's trial by fire. She came out to live with me in the back house at my parents' house, which has no bathroom but does have a sink. And I've never encountered anything work out more perfectly, frankly. Yeah. It's almost impossible. First of all, I was looking for somebody just like Rachel, which is to say, somebody basically with nothing going on who could fly to America or to California, depending on where they were flying from, to live with me basically forever and be my wife in like a week. That's what I was looking for. So, already you're starting off with an extraordinarily small pool of people. I'm Matt Evans. Like, there aren't very many people who fit that bill. And among the among the They'll last longer if there's some longing, maybe get more jobs or take up some hobbies to be apart. Generally good advice, Fug Hug Kyuk. I mean, again, for most people who have to deal with some degree of incompatibility, it's important to have heuristics like that, have sort of rules of thumb that help you to be a good partner to each other. Why is magical thinking not a form of knowledge, Jeff Barnes? What distinguishes magical thinking from non-magical thinking? Why do you insist on taking a derisive approach towards the notion of magical thinking? If I called it faith-based thinking, would you approach it differently? I don't mean the word derisively. I mean to retake the term. The key distinction between faith and not faith is the definition of the word faith. Faith is belief in the absence of evidence or in the face of contrary evidence. Now, when you're talking about the ineffability of the divine, you are definitely talking about that which cannot be objectively determined. Otherwise, it wouldn't require faith. So that's what makes it magical thinking. Nothing wrong with magical thinking. For rationalists, the thing they need most is magical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
For magical thinkingists, the thing they need most is rationalism. There you go.
True.
That's it. We all need some magic in our lives. I think so, anyway. The world is full of magic for me. It's unbelievably full of magic. Rachel is a perfect example of something. It's nothing but magic. Again, remember the description of what I was looking for. I have to be crazy to look for that. There's zero chance that succeeds ever in a non-magical world.
Mature ENTPs really know what to do with magical thinking. It doesn't hurt that you're 7.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be opposed to magical thinking, Jeff Barnes. But I was liberated as a being when I quit drinking. And to quit drinking, I had to use magical thinking. And I've had faith in my metaphysical repertoire ever since. Remember, Jeff Barnes, also, faith is a behavior, not a belief. Okay? It makes no sense to affirm position statements as a way of justifying faith. I don't need to affirm or negate any position statements to have a relationship with God that's built on faith. And in fact, it's a mistake to link any particular position statement, affirmations, and negations in general directly to a correct application or incorrect application of faith. However, that doesn't mean that certain position statements or affirmations and negations aren't consistent or inconsistent with moral obligations or moral indications. Is soulmate and stuff like that magical thinking? Yeah. Because it presumes that one is pre-intended in some sense to be with a specific other and not with anybody else. Well, Matt Evans, again, I would argue that belief in a higher power, you're already on the wrong path. That implies that people don't understand what belief means. To believe in something as a verb might mean to exercise faith, which requires willfully assuming that for which there is insufficient evidence to establish and sustain. So if you want to talk about believing as that, then that's faith. If you want to talk about belief as in position statements you choose to repeatedly affirm or negate, then that's silly. Those things aren't beliefs. Those things are attachments, position attachments. Just because you choose to affirm or negate a given position statement over and over again, it just means you're attached to that position statement, that your identity is linked to that position statement. In fact, that if you were to contradict that position statement, it would run afoul of your self-concept. That's not, but to call it a belief is to make a mistake. It's an ontological construction. It's part of your ontology. It's part of your ontology. Belief affords it way too much credit, or way too little. However you want to look at it. So, like for example, I use magical thinking, but in the following way, which is critically important. I consider myself to have something like a destiny. In other words, that there are choices I'm intended to make, or that are normatively indicated, that I ought make this choice and ought not make that choice. It would make sense that Jung would say he doesn't believe he knows, because, of course, he's a knowing type. He's an INFJ. Religion plus freedom equals happy people. I mean, I'd say development plus liberty equals happy people. Development means a broadening of the metaframe, which is to say, we all are reflexively the attentional channel habits and other habits we become as we develop. Real free will manifests when one challenges those habits and makes an attempt to recognize how they limit a person, how they limit yourself. So it's like I had to learn to at least respect some aspects of FI explicitly and externally. What I mean by that is I had to learn that people's feelings were very important, and I had to be careful not to hurt them. It was important for me to accept the legitimacy of that metric and not argue against it. It was a way of accepting the limitations of myself and recognizing that I am not perfect. I don't necessarily know best. To the extent that I want to know best, I better be incorporating the legitimacy of other modalities. And I still can fall short in that. Like that TITE video yesterday that I made. It was kind of attacky on FI or TE. and people who use those modalities a little bit. I'm not making normative statements for other people. I'm not telling other people what they should do. I am saying if their position statements are right or wrong, correct or incorrect, that is to say, but I'm not making normative statements about what people should do. I mean, I will make universal moral statements like people ought not violate others' negative rights, but see, E3 zombie, that is knowing. It's not, but except not being able to explain things using a reducible set of arguments. That's knowing. Now, whether or not that knowing is objective or subjective depends on whether it's NI or SI. So NI is objective knowing because it's knowing about objects of the world, knowing about that which is universal. But that doesn't mean it's reducible. Not all things that are objective are reducible. Currently nodding in full agreement. Faith is core code. It is being used by everyone. It must run in the background regardless of its awareness. Now, look. My INFP friend JJ says, currently nodding in full agreement. Faith is core code. It is being used by everyone. It must run in the background regardless of its awareness. And that's true. The thing is, most faith that we exercise is non-willful faith. What makes religious faith distinct from other manners of faith is that religious faith is willful faith. What causes most conflict between rationalists and faith-based people is the insistence by rationalists that faith be interpreted under a rational paradigm, and the insistence by faith-based people that faith does validate under a rationalist paradigm. The rationalists are wrong to evaluate it accordingly, except through a meta-rationalist framework like the one I'm presenting, which nobody does except for me, as far as I can tell. And people who learn that this is a good way to do it from me, which is totally okay. You know, you don't even have to credit me or anything, whatever. But yeah, and then, you know, faith-based people ought not try to say their shit validates under the rationalist framework. It doesn't. It's faith-based, obviously. Okay, so okay, my bad. I still stand Jung was fine with things not being reducible. I agree with you there, E3 Zombie. He was fine with things not being reducible. That's why he constantly went to archetypes instead of like what I do, which is cognitive function mechanics. Because he was NI, then FE, then TI. So TI was definitely secondary to his holism, you know. Yeah, that's fine. You know, I'm not trying to pick a fight with you, E3 Zombie. I'm not saying that you're disagreeing or we're in disagreement. I get what you're saying, and I agree with the basic concept that Jung didn't think reducibility mattered for shit, dog. He was like, don't matter if this is reducible, irreducible, schmaboosable, or relucible. Don't matter. Okay. That was Carl Jung quote, Winston Phone. That's an interesting quote. That is an interesting quote. Yeah, well, Lead and I is great. I like Lead and I a lot. You know, here's an example of the difference between an NE dom and an NI dom. We pulled up behind a car yesterday, and Rachel saw on this car a bumper sticker for a Christian radio station, 107.9. And she was like, hey, you should put that on. I bet they're playing Christmas music. Now that's nuanced NI. Okay. So it's like that takes a lot of different factors into account to utilize a single piece of SE data, namely 107.9 Jesus radio. I was thinking about that, Matt Evans. I think maybe I was gonna announce a sale for Christmas. I think I was gonna talk to Isaiah Root about it. Maybe just launch like a half price sale with like 10 $50 sessions up there, scheduled at various times for the holidays. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So I will I'll talk to him about it and maybe do that today. Yeah, so think about this. She took this one piece of information about the bumper sticker and her SI awareness that right now is Christmas time, and that Christians and Christmas go together, and concluded that the Christian station was probably playing Christmas music. And we put on the Christian station, and sure enough, they're playing a great Christmas song that we both wanted to hear. So that's nuanced NI, because you got to be sort of aware of the external environment more than I usually am. And also a lot of others, that just NI just does that shit, right? Like I would, if I had been drawn, my attention had been drawn to that Christian bumper sticker, I never would have put the two and the two together. Oh, well, it's Christmas time. That's Christian station. So I would have stopped at I guess my SI knowledge. Christian stations play like shitty, like, oh Lord, to worship you feels great now. How I love worship, 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 worship. It's like I think of Christian music as always having the word worship in it, which is just so dumb. It's like, stop saying worship. Stop talking to the Lord like it's like I'm at some sort of fucking gay ass retreat. I don't like that stuff. Not all radio stations play Christmas songs all day long. There's only one in Los Angeles that plays Christmas songs all day long. Coast 103.5. That's a station everyone puts on during Christmas time if they want to listen to Christmas music. The other stations will occasionally toss in a Christmas song around Christmas time. David Bowie is not an ENTP. David Bowie's got to be ENFP. I don't think he's ISFP. He seems a little too ideationally active to be ISFP. Well, Eileen, a lot of people want confirmation. People might think they know their type, but they want confirmation. They want to talk to me about specific kinds of questions or concerns they have about their type, or see how solid it is, like how argumentationally defensible it is, or lots of other reasons. I mean, the thing is, I do believe that as a general rule, I can do an excellent job, not just of typing people, but to the extent that they wanted it, of generally assessing them and even trying to attempt to give some sort of normative guidance, like what would be a better way to manifest itself, or things to watch out for, or shit like that, without being too presumptuous. Because I think most people who have any advice for people are presumptuous. They assume that the other person is subject to the same kind of advice that they themselves are subject to, because they operate under the assumption that everybody's basically the same type as they are. NFP, I think, for Bowie, just because the lyrics and stuff seem too any for an ISFP. But I don't know. I have trouble typing people like celebrities and stuff that I don't ever actually get to talk to. I take a stab at it. Like Rachel likes me to type celebrities. She's the one who pointed. Here's another NI thing. She pointed out the other day that she had gone to the channel. She found it by typing in Enneagram Type 7 famous people. But, she wasn't Googling, know anything about this channel. She was actually looking for Type 7 celebrities, But probably the same thing applies with like MBTI shit. Like you type in INFJ famous people, probably decent chance going to link to shit from my channel, But I don't actually do that. I don't actually talk about famous people very much, celebrities, and their type. So it never occurred to me until she talked about it the other day. This this search reality, right? That I've created this clickbaity search reality that I never intended to create at all. But I have been doing the channel for like 6 or 7 years now, and that never occurred to me until Rachel brought it up. That's ignoring NI, Baffy, hi. Hi, Baffy. Is Baffy short for Bartholomew? I do talk with famous people, you're right. My main reason is I've typed myself, but I've been typed by a few people, and I've got every type in gamma, but SIFENE and TI polar does not click, but I'm certain I'm INTJ, so I'm sure Eric can figure it out. Yeah, I'll figure it out. I will figure it out. I will figure it out. I will determine what type you are. I will figure it out. You'll say, but, how about this? And I'll say, that doesn't matter because of this thing over here that's more significant, and that's why you're the type that I say. And you'll go, makes sense. Yeah, I just thought do what you like. Eric can for sure. Thanks, inartistically bred. YouTube has undergone an enormous change. 2 years ago, it was all cat videos. And like, now you're actually in the golden age and you are a pioneer. Eric, you're extremely watchable. I need to end this song. I have to go back and re-listen to it. It's kind of hard to get to sleep last night, but I did it. I've been aiming for 8 hours per night. Almost got it last night and got up early for a thanks, Steph. Greater, less than 3. Regarding that Winston song, I want to point out a couple of things. Golden age or not, that just kind of make me facepalm myself. Sometimes double facepalm myself. It's like Frank James now has over 100,000 subscribers. And Eric Thor, who started years after me, has 23,000 subscribers. And I have like 6,000 subscribers. And I'm only adding like 50 subscribers a month. It's just like, I don't know what to say about it. Give the people what they want, you know? How solid do you feel typology is? Like, do you think people can switch between types or just go above the types? No. No to both those questions. The best you can possibly hope to do is what I hope to be doing myself, which is enabling free will more by recognizing which inclinations of yours are reflexive and the extent to which that indulgence in those reflexes is or is not normatively ill-advised. Matt Evans, you have correctly answered the question that I asked or implied. Can you switch between types? No. Can you go above types? No. Personality is defined as the aspect of self that remains the same throughout one's life. So, definitionally, it's not the case that you can switch between types or go above the types. To metacognate, no, I get you, E3 Zone. Most people are looking for shiny package and not raw TI. And the thing is, I have done a better job, I think, in general, of trying to make the TI more FE and less TI, or more NI and less TI. Like I try to do a better job of explaining things in a less complicated way. I try not to present shit as just these very dry processions of information anymore when I do make uploads. Like, this is a different medium, basically, live streaming. How would you explain types not fitting everyone perfectly? Well, I'd say that the aspects of personality that are defined by type are attentional channel configurations. And that only accounts for some of the human experience. So, yeah. NIDOMs can detect other NIDOMs or NDOMs. I mean, in general, if two intuition dominants spend time together, they will identify a certain camaraderie or similarity, depending on if they're the same or the other kind of intuition, in fairly short order. I mean, I don't know what to say about the notifications thing, Winston's mom. The way I can attain notifications for everybody for sure is by scheduling shit. Well, I mean, yeah, the book was, sure. I'm talking about my progression in video making. Which is to say, now when I make videos using documents, I really try to make an effort to explain it on an NIFE level as best I can. And I mean, who knows what's going to happen with this channel? I'm going to keep pressing forward and trying to get a little bit cleaner, as I have from the very beginning. What that means is, yeah, thanks, Matt. I'm not trying to dispute you or whatever. Do I French kiss with meows, meow, 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 all over Rachel's inner mouth? We don't do a whole lot of French kissing. I'm not really a huge fan of it. We do a lot of kissing each other, but do I meow, meow, meow all over her? I'm more rye, rye, rye all over her, but it's a good question. I did want to tell her last night. I don't think I ever did tell her this. I wanted to tell her that I loved her from her meow to her meow to her pia to her piow. I don't think I ever got around to telling you that, did I?
I love that.
I was thinking it. I was thinking it as I was falling asleep. I guess I never said it out loud. Rachel, I love you from your mya to your mya to your pya to your pow.
I have no words.
Do you think any coworkers are apprehensive to allow me to type them because they don't value such things or because they don't want me to have some sort of insider judgment of their personality? It's unfamiliar to people. If they are hesitant about it, they probably they're probably introverts or like concerned that they just generally like to retain the self rather than put it out there. Eric, how do you like power games in relationships? I assume you hate them. Yeah. Well, Rachel and I were having a conversation yesterday, I think, about how the critical thing in the relationship is to not ever have either partner attempt to leverage the other person. It's really not even good to attempt to bargain with the other person, although it's acceptable. Like if I say, hey, listen, if I go to this thing with you on Saturday, will you go to this thing with me on Tuesday? Neither of us want to go to the thing. That's acceptable. But even that's not desirable. The most desirable state of affairs is I want you to do what you want to do or don't want to do. And that's it. I try to take that approach with Rachel. I try to never tell her anything like, Rachel, you need to be meowing, or you should meow, or shit like that. Or why aren't you meowing? She's meeting all the expectations that matter to me. She loves me. She's kind to me. She is enthusiastic about being with me. She's fun to be with. She's easy to talk to. Like all the shit that is. That meets every possible reasonable expectation and need I could have. So I don't bother. Not that really anything I don't have anything to complain about. Thanks, Winston's mom. Do you think that type of behavior stems from SE leveraging? There are different kinds of leveraging, and some of them are like in some way you could say I'm constantly leveraging partners if there's things in dispute because I'm insisting on finding out where we agree and doing intellectual work on statuses to make them acceptable to me. So like if my partner says to me one day, you talk too much, well, then that's going to be a serious problem between us because she's made an ontological critique, a general critique of me. You talk too much. And, I'm going to need to resolve that one way or the other. Either I accept that it's true and resolve to fix the behavior, at which point later on, I'm going to need a status update from my partner that says, okay, I once did think that, but I no longer do think that because you've changed. You do not talk too much anymore. You talk exactly the right amount. Or I'm going to need to convince my partner that they're wrong about that they ought change their position on it, and then actually have them change their position on it, or else we're going to have this persistent state of ontological unacceptability, namely that my significant other thinks I talk too much as a general rule. So you might say that linguistically, I'm constantly leveraging people with their own words, but that's only if they say words that are unacceptable to me. If instead of saying the critique, you talk too much, they said, I think in that meeting last night, Eric, you probably talked a little too much. And that would be fine because that's critiquing a specific behavior in a specific instance. I like that Rachel's shredding light, Brittany. That's much better than shedding light. 100 Mile Media, what is up with you? I reciprocate your what's up, and I ask for a reply while not providing one myself. The sky is an acceptable answer. The thing is, the expectation thing, expectations and realities, that's the prime directive, quote unquote, or what I've heard was the prime directive. That you can frame everything in life through that calculus. And in fact, faith is an important part of that as well. It's like the most disturbing realities are those that prove our most baseline assumptions wrong. So, for example, so what was I saying? I got distracted.
Example of expectations versus reality.
Oh, right. Example, expectations versus reality. So, like, if you're walking along and the sidewalk collapses in front of you into a big sinkhole, it's going to be disturbing. Your expectations, your assumption has been disrupted. Now, here's another example that actually happened to me. One time I went to the weed store not that long ago. The cops fucking burst in and like busted the place while I was in there waiting in line. That disrupted my expectations. In other words, I theretofore gone to the weed store under the assumption that the cops would not show up and bust it while I was in there. That never occurred to me as I was in there that I had to like be on nervous or whatever because the cops might show up at any moment. Well, after the cops have shown up, every time I go there, I think about the fact that the cops might show up while I'm in there. And I hope that if they do show up, they don't happen to show up right between me buying the weed and getting out of the store. That's when, if they show up right then, when you have your weed, but you're not out of the store yet, and they show up, then they'll take your weed away. Okay, so SI demon. What is demon? Is that 8th slot, 7th slot? Oh, SI demon, NI dom, that must be 8th slot. Okay. SI 8th slot affects an NI dom. Well, Rachel is she's quite willful almost about her SI, or I guess abstract about it. Like she has an app to keep track of her period, her menstrual cycle, because she just doesn't use naturally SI to remember that kind of shit. Here's another thing I would say for 8th slot SI. 8th slot SI means yawning isn't contagious. And same for 7th slot SI, I'm guessing. For me, yawning is contagious. My yawns do not contage to Rachel. They do not make her yawn. Now, am I taking a single SI experiential bit of knowledge about my INFJ and generalizing out that this is true for 8 slot and 7 slot SI? Yes. But I bet it's right. Makes sense. So, that's not TMI. That's not TMI. The fact that she can't remember her menstrual cycle is not TMI. I'm not talking about her vagina, the blood that comes out of it, the um, quantity or quality of that blood, the chunks of uteral lining, or any other such thing. When you mistype someone and attribute things they do to certain function dynamics in that type, how do you reconcile that when they are found out to be another type? Well, I've never actually, as far as I know, said to anybody, "You're 100%," and then later proved to be wrong. I have said to multiple people, "You're 100%," and I've always stuck with those typings and believed them to be correct. Those instances where I've been wrong have been, I was wrong about Kimberly when I first met her. I thought she was an ESFJ. She turned out to be an ISFJ. Makes sense because when you first meet somebody with FE as a tool function, they seem like an extrovert a lot of times. Same thing happened with Rachel. I typed her as ENFJ, but not at 100%. I left some wiggle room, and turned out she was INFJ. The reason if I mistype somebody is usually the same. It's I haven't spent enough time thoroughly testing either the TI or the SI or something like that. This is partially because I have an hour, and partially because I'm trying to keep a client happy, and they don't necessarily want to be subjected to a bunch of sort of ontologically invasive tests. And if you push hard on the TI, then that's definitely ontologically invasive if they're not good at it. And the other thing to note is, of course, and this is important, hugely important, is we only have the alts we have. So it's not a matter of whether or not I'm 100% correct or not. It's a matter of whether I'm correct more often than everybody else, and I am. For typists who say they're not ever incorrect or never change their typings of anybody, they're not actually doing their job. Like, for example, C.S. Joseph typed me as ESP, then retyped me again as ESP a second time, and did no work, did zero work in either typing, frankly, but certainly made no effort to actually retype me. Just, yeah, just through whatever. Whereas I make an actual effort to type people. When they come in, I don't assume the primacy of a single typing angle that can definitively tell me the answer every time. I'm trying to go, well, you're this interaction style, so you're a meow. Comparing functions and saying one is better or more capable than the other is something I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think anybody really says that. Like TI is better than FI? Who says that? I don't think anybody says that. I mean, it is true that they are contextually appropriate or inappropriate. All functions are that. It's like it's not contextually appropriate to use FE to resolve structural concerns with a failing bridge. Repainting it and putting smiling faces on it isn't going to solve the problem. So it's definitely the case that some functions are contextually appropriate and consistent with good outcomes, and some are inappropriate and inconsistent with good outcomes. I'm not necessarily asking about the correctness. You misunderstand. I'm talking, for instance, when you attribute behavior such as that was because of demonstrative meow that doesn't throw a branch in the model when they don't actually have demonstrative meow. I mean, put it this way, those kind of it's kind of a backwards way of warranting. I'd agree. There's an implied conditionality until I come to a conclusion. I could argue that, in other words, if I stick with this conclusion, then that was because of demonstrative meow. But if I come to a different conclusion, then ultimately I misinterpreted that in the moment. The thing is, there's facts, and then there's interpretive scope one can determine from those facts. There are only a couple of facts that give you non-interpretive conclusiveness. If I can determine for sure that you are TI polar, for example, then I can be conclusive that you are ENFP or ESFP. If I can determine in fact that you are not TI polar, then I can eliminate those two conclusively. But there are very few aspects of cognitive functions that go directly like that don't require any interpretation. So ultimately, those interpretations are going to be conditional until I'm settled on a type. You know, I will say Chase's type interview was hilarious. He somewhat contradicted himself, then tried to twist the narrative to show how he seemingly came to an unbiased opinion. He's not good. He's not good at arguing, basically. He's terrible at justifying shit. When it gets down to it and he's pressed, he goes, read the book. As though it's like the Bible of typology or something. And if you ask him like why, well, yeah, these are famous typologists. I think we should prefer them over a pot smoking weirdo. Like that kind of douchebag, you know. I'm anti-dominant. I trust my instincts, but generationally, I am a female wife and mother, so sometimes I knows better, but listens to someone else and worries. Thanks for the response. I get it, kind of. Sure. I'm always happy to answer questions about my approach to typology. There's a reason why it might not be preferred over others. One of the reasons is I want you to come in and challenge the legitimacy of my approach. I want you to come in and challenge the primacy of it. I want you to come in and throw your arguments at me, and I will respond to them on point. I am not afraid of clash. Type chased me. Chase typed you, ISFP? When I wanted to debate him and prove my TETI, he ducked me. It was just in Discord, not paid, but he's afraid to clash. Of course he is. Of course he's afraid to clash. He's trying to get by on a simple little trick he does, which is he explains somebody else's positions without justifying them. When asked to justify them, he tells you to read those people. That's it. That's what he does. That's the entirety of his trick. And then he makes ad hominems or genetic fallacies of various sorts. Eric, I find that FI valuing peeps tend to condescend. Is this something you observe too, or is it just me? I mean, I think a lot of people would say I'm condescending. A lot of people call me arrogant, condescending, self-important, or shit like that. So I would say probably FE people probably find FI valuing people sometimes condescending because they'll they'll kind of wag their FI fingers at you. Yeah, he told you to look into Linda Barron's, would not debate, then said I was hostile for wanting to challenge him. It was amazing. Exactly. He'll go like, here's some bullshit I made up and / regurgitated. And you go, but why is that the case? And he goes, man, tells you more about the same bullshit, right? And if it doesn't actually explain anything. And you go, but why is that the case? And he goes, read the book. You got to read the expert, Linda Barron's. And you go, aren't you the expert, fucktard? What's left with value FI in your experience? I mean, obviously FI DOMs, FI third slot, FI fifth, FI seventh are the ones who are going to more notably value FI. Although I would note as well that if you got FI tool, it's going to seem as though you value it because you're going to constantly be using it. And for somebody like me who's running TI tool, that's going to run afoul of your FI tool, and we're going to have if we have a dispute. Wouldn't say EHPs can be pretty condescending, yeah. EHPs also, yeah. With TE demonstrative critic. I mean, I don't think it's the TE demonstrative that makes us condescending. I think it's FI polar, TI tool, and the reality of a world that's not very TI sound, you know. The thing to remember about TI tool users is that more so than TI DOMs, TI tool users like to have definitive position statements. TI DOMs have a more nuanced understanding of it, so they are comfortable with neither affirming nor negating things. TI tool likes to affirm and negate clear position statements. If you ask TI tool the chicken or rooster question, TI tool will give you an answer and then be prepared to argue it. Chicken or rooster. TI DOM will say, well, it depends on the frame. Yeah. It's not that the TI tool users don't also get that it depends on the frame. They don't get what the point of that disclaimer is. We know we're here to argue the thing, so yeah. Okay, so Chase often goes back on those quick typings. I witnessed him mistype and retype multiple times. Okay. A suspected ESTJ has been giving me unsolicited advice for years, finally called me arrogant when I finally spoke up and argued against his points. It's so weird. That is weird because it's an FE critique. It's usually based on some semantics or anecdotal typings. He doesn't type based on anything objective that you can hang your hat on, as far as I can tell. He just sort of like whatever comes to mind to justify conclusions he's already drawn. I don't know. He is a silly goose, a silly goose. Unfortunately, he is also a poisonous, silly goose, dumping toxic misinformation into the pool of knowledge. It's like I read something on. I saw this. I Googled myself this morning, and on Reddit, I'm being declared an INFP. I saw another thing on Reddit that said I was an ILE, or somewhere, I think it was Reddit also, an ILE with ADHD and executive function disorders.
Is that all like CS Joseph jargon?
No, the ILE one is Socionics name for EHP. So at least they had me typed right, but this person was being quite pathologizing. He was going. He's saying I have multiple executive function problems. So, I mean, that's such an ontologically assaulting frame, frame bias by that person who assumes that a non-TE frame represents some sort of disorder. Something's wrong with me because I'm not TE enough. Have you seen Untitled Goose Game? You play as a goose and wreak havoc. Lol. Untitled Goose Game? How many liters of water do you drink every day on average, or what consumption goal do you have? Of water? Regular water? With nothing else in it? Not very much water. Probably zero water. Just regular water? I mean, I drink like soda and tea and coffee and non-alcoholic beer. But not really water. Occasionally I'll drink a little can of Perrier that my parents get. Oh yeah, Florida's natural. We do have some Florida's natural in the house, in his house. We got the FNGJ in his house, y'all. We do. We got some cartons of it. I got 5 cartons last time I went to the store. Okay. Well, that's the thing. ADHD is not a disorder in any meaningful sense of the word. It is basically being an action type, but more specifically, and most specifically, ENTP and ESTP. But I mean, I think it's two different forms of quote unquote ADHD, neither of which are actual disorders. That's the problem with declaring something like that an executive function disorder. Is you're saying that ENTPs are by nature wrong. There's a normative quality to that. So why do I get to take these drugs? Well, because there's something wrong with me, right? Just because these drugs help me to function better doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. It means I should take these drugs, maybe. But, that's different than there's something wrong with me. We have the best oranges, says MT. Well, MT, if you're talking about Florida, your oranges are irrelevant to this conversation. Because we be talking about the Florida's natural grapefruit juice, dog. We don't give a fuck about your goddamn oranges. All right? Oranges, you go put them up your butt. We taking all the grapefruits, squeezing them till they fully squozen, put them in a box, calling it FNGJ, and selling it to me. Then you are doing God's work. Scratch your neck. Yeah. MT scratching his neck right now about citrus fruit. All right, I'm going to end this because I got to go to a debate tournament today. I've got a debate tournament. I have to be there before 7:30. Hello, how are you, Ghostwriter? You got here to the end. So you're going to miss out on any further conversations with me. Yeah, he does. Who's that guy? Oh, enjoys both getting offended and offensive. Thanks. I hope to do well. There's over 40 kids in the field again. It's the Damien Middle School tournament. The invitation says they're going to have 3 judge panels for all the rounds, which would be super nice, but crazy if they do. Anyway, probably going to be a long day. Hopefully, fingers crossed, my kid will win the whole goddamn thing. First place would be great. But if not, hopefully he'll do well. See you. I love you all with my feelings, and I want you to know that. that I have a tender spot in my heart for each of you. Okay? And that's not going to change. Not going to change just because you break my chair or something. Okay? Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. The end.